Many people have been asking me how come I grew up in a Zionist environment and eventually decolonized my mind and heart and became a staunch supporter of the full liberation of Palestinians on their land. And so I'm going to tell you this story while we're taking a little walk here with the trees and the birds. It's going to be a bit long, but I feel like it's very, very, very important that I'm going to voice my story here because it's important to what's going on right now. So please, if you can, engage with it. Listen to the end, share it as wide as you can, and let's make it count, and let's make it reach as many people and hearts as possible. Besides, what are you in a hurry somewhere? You're sitting and scrolling on TikTok, so I think we're good. I think the first meaningful instance that I can recall that I started becoming more aware of the Palestinian experience and the conflict is when I was very young, about 11 or 12. For context, I was born in Jerusalem and practically grew up in the Jewish quarter of the old city of Jerusalem because my grandparents lived there. And that day, I was walking down a street in the Muslim quarter with my cousin, who is, and still is today, from a family of staunch settlers in the West Bank. And we were walking down when suddenly my cousin sprints towards a Muslim child, our age, kicks him as hard as he could in the balls and runs away and disappears into the alleys. And I remember being utterly shocked and terrified. I was shocked because I could not fathom why would someone do something like that. Mind you, I was a child. I wasn't aware of practically anything. Why would someone do something like that to a child who did nothing to them, to a completely innocent child? And I was terrified because I'm in the middle of the Muslim quarter. I was afraid that people will recognize that I was somehow associated with him and come and hurt me. Somehow I unfroze eventually and I found my way back to my grandparents' house, where I met my cousin again. I don't remember the conversation that we've had particularly, but I do remember remaining traumatized and very shocked by this experience, very shocked. Years later, when I was 18, I went to enlist in the Israeli occupation forces. It's mandatory in Israel, and I served in artillery for 3 years. Back then, the way I justified it, even though I was already aware to a degree to the Palestinian struggle and to the occupation reality, the way I justified myself and this being in the army, like many other so-called liberal Israelis, was with the stance of, yes, there is problems, there is the Palestinian problem, there is some, extreme settlers who are making a mess. But after all, army is still necessary because our existence here is justified and we need to keep our borders, right? So I'm there, and among many other places, eventually I was serving in the West Bank, and we were manning this checkpoint. And every morning, very early in the morning, at maybe 4 a.m., buses and buses of Palestinian workers that cannot find work in the West Bank and go work inside of the occupied territories of Israel were stopped at the checkpoint. All the workers go out, stand in line, people from all ages, from 15 to 70, just so they can be searched by these 18-year-old soldiers. They can shove their dirty hands into their food bags and check that they don't have something that they hide. That in and of itself raised a lot of questions for me even then. For once, what is the historical context that brought this particular reality to be? Why am I on the side of the searching and they are being searched? What is actually going on here? But I think there was one instance in particular that really shocked me to my core and was maybe the seed that propelled me eventually to completely decolonize my mind. One day, one morning, as I was walking towards the checkpoint to do my shift, I saw As I was approaching, I saw an old Palestinian man, maybe in his 70s, hands tied behind his back, eyes covered, sitting on the floor while soldiers are beating him, laughing at him, humiliating him. And I came closer and asked them, like, what did he do? Like, back then I still had this occupier mentality of like, oh, he must have done something to deserve this, right? They didn't answer to me, they just laughed it off. And they kept him there for hours until maybe 2, 3 p.m. Needless to say, he didn't go to work that day. And I remember being utterly shocked and later reporting it to my superiors, reporting it to the commander. I don't remember the conversation we had exactly, but I do remember that he dismissed me in so many ways, and nothing was done about it. Nor was it done about any of the other many similar instances that I witnessed happening there, which is just one checkpoint out of hundreds. And that was more than 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. So a lot has happened since, and it just got worse. Since then, after the army, I traveled the world and started opening my eyes to different perspectives, meeting Palestinian people in the diaspora and hearing their experiences and their perspectives and opening my eyes. Obviously reading a lot, the works of Rashid Khalidi and the 100 Years' War of Palestine, ex-Israeli historians and academics such as Avi Shlaim and Ilan Pepe and their books, and doing a lot more work, inner work and research and study, and hearing more and more and more and opening up my heart to the pain and suffering of Palestinians under daily brutal occupation. But I think more than anything, I open up my mind and heart to the unbelievable smokescreen of lies that I was fed, spoon-fed, my entire life by Zionist propaganda, which eventually brought me to this point. There are many other anecdotes to this story, and many things happen in between of these two main events that I told you about, which I will keep sharing more and more in the future. But for now, I want to leave you with this. Thank you so much for listening to this. It's very, very important that voices of Jewish people and Israeli people like me will be heard, that the world knows that not all Jewish people and not all people who grew up in Israel are behind and in support of the brutal occupation and this ongoing genocide that is happening right now. Continue the struggle for liberation of the Palestinian people and all people, which is all of the same. Have an amazing day, and free Palestine. Much love.